Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am very grateful and honored today to have the Chief Operating Officer of Cutco Corporation with me, Tim O'Keefe. Tim has been with Cutco since 1994, has risen through the ranks and held a variety of roles, which he'll describe to you today, culminating with his promotion to COO in January of 2019. So he's been serving in that role for several years now and has had an increase in his responsibilities with the recent retirement of Mr. John Welpley. And so I'm grateful to be able to have our COO with us today. Tim, good to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me, Dan. It's a real honor to be here, especially considering the caliber of guests that you've already had. So thank you and look forward to our conversation.
Excellent. Well, listen, I would love for our organization to really get to know you. And so why don't we start by having us hear a little bit about Tim O'Keefe personally.
All right. Well, my story begins here in Olean. I was born and raised here in Western New York. I attended elementary and high school right here in town. My mother, who is a spry 83 years young, worked for New York Telephone for a long career. My father was employed as a production planner at another local company called Dresser Industries later on. He had 39 years of service there upon his retirement. So he had a great career. I had an older brother and I have an older sister. So I am the youngest of three. We lived right here in the middle of town in Olean on North 3rd Street, the number of streets. And I guess growing up, I'm a product of the 80s. And we had a great neighborhood with just lots of kids around. There's always fun things to do in our neighborhood, outside with friends and things. So I'd say that I'm really fortunate that I grew up in a very connected neighborhood. And
Yeah.
I'll share with you that actually in the early 1980s, we had some new neighbors that moved in across the street from my folks, and their names were Eric and Marianne Lane.
Oh, wow.
So Eric and Marianne were across the street from us, from my folks' house growing up. So that was a great experience. And I'll share with you, Dan, one of my favorite stories there with Eric. The first time I met him, I had to be probably about 12 years old, I would say. And they had a very large pine tree in their front yard, which came down unexpectedly. And Eric, he was right out there taking care of it after it came down, doing it by hand with an axe. So,
wow.
So my mom and dad said to my older brother and I, hey, you guys, get your tails out there and help him. So we went out and we helped him take care of a good part of that tree. And I can tell you, he was thrilled. Just the idea that folks in the neighborhood were coming out to help him. And that was really the first time I met Eric. So that's how I got to know him. And that's what began great friendship.
How interesting. So cool that you are an Olean born and bred boy there. And that's always a neat thing about a lot of the people who are some of the leaders of our company. There's a number of you guys that were grew up right there in the area. So it's pretty cool. How about your path for education?
Well, I attended parochial school in Olean, St. Mary's Academy. Then I moved into public high school, which is Olean High. Upon graduation there, I enrolled at the State University of New York at Geneseo, which is a small liberal arts college in central New York, a little south of Rochester. While there, I received a bachelor's degree in management science with a concentration in human resources and industrial labor relations. So that was my my education until several years ago. Worked with some folks here in a kind of a cohort program, and received a master's degree in professional leadership from St. Bonaventure here in Olean.
Right. Nice. And tell us about your family now, Tim.
Well, my wife and I are blessed to have 4 daughters and 1 son-in-law presently. So 4 daughters. We have Rochelle and her husband, Dan. Amanda is our next oldest. And we have Megan and Lauren. And the 4 ladies' ages range from 31 to 15. So we've got a bit of a spectrum there.
Wow.
Yeah.
A wide range.
Yeah. Megan is a senior. She's about to be headed off to college. So we're working through that. And we have 2 grandchildren, Ford and Stella. And just to clarify, the grandkids are from the 31-year-old. So,
yes, indeed.
Yeah, but we're fortunate that they actually live right up the road from us, so we get quality time with our grandkids.
Wow, you already have 2 grandkids. That's pretty cool as well. So tell us a little bit about your career experience before Cutco, after you finished at SUNY Geneseo.
When I graduated from Geneseo in the early 90s, the U.S. was in a recession. And although the recession is, I guess, what I would call a little bit more mild compared to some of the more recent ones that we've had, there was a very sluggish economic recovery. In particular, the employment piece there was a little bit more severe. And I remember they called it a jobless recovery. And so basically, when things started to go back in the right direction, from a GDP perspective, the economy was starting to roll, but it wasn't growing and actually was still seeing decreasing levels of employment. So when I graduated, I didn't have a full-time job lined up. I didn't have a degree-based job. So upon graduation, I started looking and took a number of part-time seasonal positions out of college, and working as a retail sales associate. I did some merchandising for a local beverage company. I was a substitute teacher, and one of the jobs that I had in that time period too was an admissions counselor for another college nearby. It's the University of Pittsburgh. That it was their Bradford campus. So right out of school, didn't pick up that full-time degree-based job. But all those positions that I held, or that I took in that interim period before I started working at Cutco, I look back on that and I really think that I was kind of lucky to have that experience, because each one of those jobs taught me something different. With the substitute teacher position, it definitely taught me patience. Tolerance, some of the other jobs, just the impact, the power of solid customer service, So I'd say that each one of those experiences really did ultimately help me grow.
Great. And so that this all led you to finding Cutco in 1994?
Well, my first experience with Cutco took place in May of 1988, and that was between my freshman and sophomore year in college. So I was hired to work for the summer in production as part of Cutco's college student program. So they assigned me to our handle polishing department on second shift. And Dan, I remember I wasn't crazy about the second shift hours. All my friends at that point had first shift jobs, and I wanted to enjoy my summers with them. So I ended up asking the employment manager at the time, David Coblin, who's now vice president and director of human resources. But I asked David at the time if I could work first shift. And he looked at me and smiled and said, sure, somewhere else. And anybody that knows David Copeland can hear those words coming out of his mouth. So
that is funny. That is funny. And of course, David is still with us to this day.
Yep, sure is. Yep.
Yeah.
Consider him a great friend. So, but yeah, so I actually worked three summers in production from 1988 to 1990. And really, that was also just a great experience. I got to know wonderful folks, a number of them that are still here, some 30 years later, folks that I'm still working with. And the other thing, Dan, that I took with me from that experience is just the firsthand knowledge of the craftsmanship and the quality and the pride that goes into producing Cutco. That our friends on the floor to this day still bring every day. So, but that was really my first experience with Cutco. It was working on the floor.
So 3 summers working in the factory. That's I didn't know that. That's really, really interesting and cool to hear. Like who knows? That's right when I started in the vector business during those same years. Mm-hmm. So it would have been I think my first trip to Olean would have been in like April of 1990. It might have been a year sooner. It wasn't the summer, so you probably weren't in there, but that's right during the exact same time where I first came to Olean. So pretty cool. So then take us to 1994, and how did you make the shift to working with Cutco full time?
So my full-time experience began in the spring of '94 as a customer service representative. I was working for Mark George. I'm sure you remember Mark.
Yes, of course.
So I was working for Mark George here in Olean, and within about a year or so, Mark moved out of the service arena and moved into Cutco International. So Jeff Hardy took over, and I began working for Jeff Hardy, who became service manager, and did that for a few years. And I want to say it was in '96 that I was afforded an opportunity to move into a supervisor role within the service group, and that was a great experience. And it's interesting when I look back on it, and the way in which we operated in service at that point, and the way in which we operate now. Needless to say, the technology is much different, but really the the values part of things, that hasn't changed. And the goal continues to be, and it continues to be one of our missional commitments, which is to provide service that exceeds expectations. So we continue to take that commitment very seriously. As we all know, we are a premier product, and we have premier service attached to it. So I love working that time of my life in customer service. So yes, so that was 94 to 98 when I was in kind of the service role there.
Okay.
And then in 98, I guess I followed Mark George into Cutco International, and became assistant administrative manager there, and helped out with Olean in international operations here in Olean, shipping product to wherever we needed to ship it, and tracking product and things. A little bit later into my tenure there, I was asked to head up to Oakville, Ontario, Southern Ontario, to the home office there. And that was as administrative and service manager. And I went up there, Dan, because the Canadian administrative manager at the time, he had been asked to go to Australia we had operations there. And because he was a citizen of the Crown, it was easy for Ted to move over to Australia. So I went up, helped out Jim Khalil, Joe Cardillo.
Yeah.
Got to work with great people like Angie McDougall, Trent Booth. As I mentioned, Joe. Dave Duran was up there at the time. And made a great friend in Mike McDonald, who was also working up in admin in the Oakville office. So I was up there for about a year, and then the Australian administrative manager, the fellow that I followed into Canada, what he and his wife were expecting, and they wanted to have the baby in Canada. So he returned, and I drew the lucky straw and was able to go over to Australia for a while. And
Oh, wow.
be the admin guy over there. So I was there for 4 or 5 months, working in the Sydney area, and worked with Roger Van Alst,
Yeah.
Tiffany Thomas, Tiffany Van
Yeah.
Alst, right?
They're my they're my neighbors now, the Van Alsts.
Are they really?
Yeah. Yeah. They live near here.
Well, tell them that I said hello.
Yeah, will do.
Yeah, they took good care of me when I was over there. So that was just a great life experience. So
So you were there for a few months in Australia.
Yep.
Yeah, I never knew that you had gone to either Canada or Australia, Tim. So that's the arc of your career here is really, and I'm finding it to be very fascinating that, you worked in the factory, you worked in customer service, and then you had these roles that you just described in helping with the Canadian team and helping with the Australian team for a short period of time as well. So really neat.
I'll be the first to say that the varied experiences that I have, I've been incredibly fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll also say that I remember Jim Stitt Sr., and he said this to a number of people here, that it never hurts to have multiple arrows in your quiver. Put another arrow in that quiver, and it's another experience. And when those experiences were afforded me, fortunately, I had the ability to participate, to move on those. So,
yeah, that's great. Yeah. Wow. So then what came next?
Did a little work in Costa Rica, Central America. We were hooking up our Olean-based processing systems with our operations down there. So spent a little bit of time helping our friends down there, the team down there, get acquainted with our processing systems. After the international piece, I came back, and I moved into analytics, and I was working for Stu Smith. I'm sure you remember Stu, of course.
Of course.
Wonderful guy. So I worked there as a data analyst for Stu. Worked with Carolee Labella, who's there now, and Steve Spry, Eric Brunel. So that was a great experience. Had a short stint as data processing supervisor. That was 2003, working for Ed Negron, and again under Stu's direction. And then I guess the biggest change for me really took place in the fall of 2003. I had the opportunity to move into human resources as labor relations manager, working for David Copeland, the fellow that wouldn't let me work first shift.
Yeah, and this is like You described earlier that your first jobs after college were, non-degree based work. This is really the first truly degree based role that you had. I mean, I know there's a tie-in in pretty much all of them, but this is the first, like, right up the alley of what you went to school for, right?
Yep, sure was. 100%.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So
So,
tell us about that role.
so I guess in a way, kind of, there's a little bit of coming full circle there, moving back into primarily the manufacturing side of the business. And in that role as labor relations manager, that required, working closely with our Cutco cutlery manager, supervisor core, and with our union. And our folks on the floor are represented by the United Steelworkers. It's Local 5429. And it's there that I would say that I truly had the opportunity to connect with that team on the floor and our manufacturing leadership team. And it's there really that I got to work more closely with Jim Stitt Jr.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I'd say, Dan, that I'm very proud that along with Jim, people like David Copeland, Brent Driscoll, Carrie Latier, Kathy Shalander, Brian George, who was union president for us for a time. We worked really hard to strengthen and continue to build the relationship with our Olean manufacturing team. And I think we did some really great things culturally there. And for me, that was a genuinely rewarding experience. And I consider that time in my career just a really special phase, because I got to work with the guys that I went to high school with on the floor, and we made some really, really good things happen. So yeah, so that labor relations period, I mean, that took me from 2003 to really into 2017. And there were some steps along the way in there, but that was a special time. And so then in 2017, I was promoted to the position of director of operations for Cutco Cutlery. And following that, I was asked to move into this role, the role of COO for Cutco Corporation. That was in 2019. And I didn't recognize him at the time, Dan, but Jim Senior and Jim Junior were really looking at internal succession planning. And fortunately for me, they were willing to make some moves early, which basically afforded me the opportunity to work with John Welpley for 3 years prior to John's retirement, which just happened here on February 1st of 2022.
Yeah.
So for the past 3 years, I've been working closely with John, and John, he's an amazing guy. 40 years of experience, immense knowledge in basically all facets of the business, both from the Vector side and the Cutco side. His experience, knowledge, and insight, spans administration and service and IT and accounting and finance and production. So and I would joke with John, and I'd say, John, you leaving leaves big shoes to fill, both literally and figuratively. So, but John was fantastic in helping me get ready for this role, and I'll never be able to thank him enough.
Yeah. I've said many times about John that he was amazing at balancing the financial safeguarding of the company, which was a part of his role, particularly when he was the CFO. And then along with the sort of field friendly way he approached decision making, where, right, it was really about doing what was best for the individual in so many of the decisions that he made. And it was pretty remarkable to sort of witness how he balanced those things. And I know that, with his retirement, his role is being filled by multiple people there in Olean who are, handling parts of what he did.
Yeah, great observation. You're dead on. So the IT piece, Dominic Rogers, here in Olean. The marketing piece, Steve Porzik continues there. Finance and accounting, Mark Heister, Jason Wooderick, and then on the admin and service side, myself with the help of my good friend Jeff Hardy. So John's departure, that job kind of got appropriately split to the people most knowledgeable in each particular area.
Yeah. Tell us about your specific responsibilities as the COO.
Okay. I'm going to I'll hit on something that you said earlier, Dan. I'll be the first to state that, again, I've been incredibly fortunate to have the opportunity to gain that varied and I guess extensive amount of job jumping. Working in admin, operations, human resource experience there, being in those different roles. So I really think it's those collective experiences that kind of have afforded me this opportunity. So, so in terms of what are the responsibilities of this role? What I'd say is that in this role, what I'm asked to do is support assist Jim and the rest of our executive team in providing and perpetuating the Cutco brand leadership that Jim Sr. and Eric Lane built. And, it's providing what we call people-centric leadership. It's the oversight for the Olean-based operation activities. I'm using that people-centric, people-first style of leadership. And for me, I guess the space that I would say that I'm operating in mostly, at least right now, is I'm working to build what I'd say are more cohesive operating business relationships between Cutco and Vector. And, I'm hopeful that the previous experiences that I've had are, what will help me do that with the folks that I've had the opportunity to get to know on both sides of the equation. But it's really providing the Olean team, manufacturing and admin, with insight and perspective into what the field organization is experiencing, and likewise, working to provide field executive leadership with Olean operational intelligence. So it's linking the two together is a key part of the work that I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Well, you are, I appreciate that you talked about people-centric leadership, and in that way, you're truly carrying on the culture and legacy that was established by John Welpley and Jim Stitt and Eric Lane, and of course, many others as well. What are some of the elements you feel like of the culture that came from some of those founding fathers of the company that you are intent on carrying on?
Yeah, so for sure, the people first philosophy. John Welpley operated with and emphasized a people first strategy for decision making. Eric, Jim, John, Jim Jr., all of those guys operate in that way. And we all know that we are a company that's built on relationships, both in the field and in Olean. And, I recognize that what we do here in Olean impacts the relationship that the sales organization has with the customer. It goes to quality and service, attention to detail, and really, it's that fundamental understanding that we compete on value more than anything else. And value isn't measured in dollars; it's measured in experience. And our mission is to provide a truly exceptional experience for our customers and our people. And I strongly feel that the customer experience is only going to be as good as our employees' experience. So from an Olean perspective, to ensure that our folks working here in Olean have meaningful, engaging work, that we are working to inspire them with positive influence, giving those friends, our family here, that world-class work environment. That's that perpetuating and sustaining people first, people-centric vision that that came from Eric and Jim ultimately. And as stated in our mission, we are committed to honesty, integrity, and ethics in all aspects of business, founded on respect for people. And I'm grateful that I've got to see Eric Lane, Jim Stitt, John Welpley, Brent Driscoll, Jim Jr., and a host of other peoples live those values,
Yeah.
every day.
I love that you draw that line between the employee experience in Olean and the field experience in Vector to the customer experience that we're going to be providing people in the long run, right? That it's all interconnected.
Mhm.
Like that's a really great insight that I feel like, we should underscore here that the people can take to heart.
It's the analogy that I remember hearing previously. It's a three-legged bar stool, what you just said. And you knock any one of those out and you got a problem. So they
Yeah.
are all interconnected.
Yeah, that's powerful. Tell us some other important, just general leadership philosophies that you hold, Tim.
So Dan, for me, the definition of leadership is positive influence built on trust, respect, and integrity. And in regard to trust, I don't think that can be overstated. In fact, somebody's influence expands in proportion to the amount of trust that exists in a relationship. So, it's these concepts aren't real difficult. There's nothing magically here, I guess. We concentrate on doing what's right for our people, and what that means is doing the right things with our folks and for our folks, for our teams. And sometimes that may not make the best business sense, but it normally always makes the best people sense. And in the return there, while it's intangible, I think it's really, you can't measure it. So I think it all comes down to the words I use a lot are trust, respect, and rapport. And the investment and the extra investment that we put into those three things with our teams is what I feel really makes our company, Vector and Cutco and Vector. It's what makes us different. It's what makes us special. It's what makes us better. So, it's easy. I think it's easy to, for people or for organizations to rely on black and white policies, but that's not the right way to lead. In making good people decisions, you have to step back and look at all the circumstances, and dig into the underlying elements. When I was working in human resources, and occasionally we'd have a grievance come in from the local, and the thing that we would say is, and there's some identified contract violation that results in a grievance, but really, what's the real deal? What's the real issue? And let's have a conversation on that to find solutions. So, it's harder to do business that way. I think it takes more time, but it's the right thing to do. And, that trust piece doesn't necessarily come easily or quickly, but it comes because of continuous actions. So, I guess to answer your question, for me, it's I'm a heavy merchant. So words like inspiration and empathy and sympathy and understanding to me are as important as assets and liabilities, return on investment in the workplace. So, but I guess again, I'd say it's pretty simple. It's the idea that, have faith in your people, trust them to perform their jobs and to support organizational goals and treat them with respect. So,
Yeah. You said at the outset, that, the definition of leadership is positive influence built on trust, respect, and integrity, and that influence expands based on trust. And you said something there along the lines of, this is pretty simple, like everybody should get this. And the reality, though, is that not everybody does operate in that way as a leader. There are many leaders, not that I've experienced in our company, but there are many leaders that have their own interest in mind first, which, I mean, in a way, I think everybody has some level of self-interest as part of what we're all trying to get ahead in life and, do our best. But it just seems like, you and the leaders of Cutco are able to operate in an enlightened way where, we are trying to help the company to do well, but that people first decision making is a big part of creating that feeling of trust. And it's something that I don't know exists as much, where a leadership team is beholden to shareholders, right? I mean, we are a family owned business, and so the buck truly stops in Olean, and it creates that opportunity to be able to make those types of decisions. And the Lanes and the Stitts have always supported that way of operating, as far as I could tell, right?
100%. If anybody has the opportunity to pick up Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game, that book could be written about this organization. And you just hit on a number of key points from it. In fact, our leadership team here in Olean just finished a kind of a group exercise where we all dug into that book and had great conversation around it.
Yeah. And you said something there, but also, Tim, about it might take longer, take more time to operate in that way. And my thought was that it might take more time to operate that way in the short term, but by operating in that way, it saves so much time and energy in the long term because of the relationships that are built and the tenure that people have with the company. I mean, we have such a almost like strangely bizarre amount of people that have worked with our company for so many years. Yeah. And you just don't see that anywhere else, of people that have been with the company for 20, 25, 30 and more years that stay because of this trust that's built and this family feel that is built. It's really remarkable.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more, Dan. Putting the time in on the front end, just like anything else, you put the time in on the front end, it's going to yield dividends on the back end. And for anybody that's been here in Olean on tour, when you walk through our Hall of Honor, our main hallway downstairs, just outside the manufacturing area, we have pictures of everybody in the organization on the wall that have hit 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 years. And that wall is getting pretty full. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Any other leadership philosophies that stand out to you that you feel are important that you'd want to share?
Yeah, again, for me, it's the whole idea of being people-centric, taking care of folks, doing the right things, and honestly, I mean, we spend more time at work with our work families or our work companions than oftentimes we do with our biological families. And I just think that work should be a place where we come, where we can trust each other, where we can inspire each other positively, and where we can have fun together, and where at the end of the day we're able to bring support back to our families and our communities. And I feel very fortunate that the organization that I've worked my whole life with operates in that way.
Yeah, it's great. And I definitely would say the same thing from the Vector side of things. Tell us about the nature of your working relationship with Jim Stitt Jr.
Jim and I have been working quite a bit together since 2004, 2005. And that started when we both were in more of a manufacturing role. So I can't speak highly enough of Jim's philosophy in terms of taking care of people, doing the right thing, digging in and finding the why behind questions that come up. He always is encouraging us to gain additional perspective. And I'll tell you, I really appreciate him in that, as I'm moving into this role, I'm able to go to him with questions to get insight, opinion. It's truly, it's not only a friendship, there's a mentorship there that he's providing me and the other folks on our executive team here in Olean. And he's just, he's a great guy.
Yep.
Can't say enough about him.
Exactly. Well, Tim, what is most exciting for you when you look at the future of the company?
It comes back to people for me, Dan. And it's the opportunity that Cutco and Vector and Cutco provides people. It's that opportunity to be better and to do better. And what I would say it really excites me is that the people who are leaders, who are currently leaders, and who are our next level leaders, our developing leaders, they have this mindset to share their gifts or to empty their cups for others. And that is if there's a check the box kind of a thing on an application for a successful person in the Cutco Vector organization, I think that's it. When I say leaders, again, that's not based on title. That's those folks that provide that positive influence. We've got leaders all over the place that don't hold any kind of formal title, women and men on the floor, that hold positions of influence as a steward or a group leader or a safety rep, folks in our service and admin areas, sales and sales support. We all have different gifts according to the grace that's been given us. And I think what's really special and what excites me, continues to excite me about the future of Cutco and Vector is that we lead by sharing those gifts. We share in service, we share in teaching, we share in coaching, we share in listening, we share in giving. And so that's what excites me about the future. It's that we continue to have the real desire, the ability, and the capability to impact people's lives in that positive way. So I think that's the real measure of success for a person, for a company. It's how you touch the lives of other people.
Yep, that's great. Excellent to hear all that, Tim. I am often asked by people, what do you do? And I typically start with, well, by dumb luck, I found this opportunity when I was 17 years old. And then I
Mm-hmm.
describe, what it is. And I feel very grateful that I was able to come into an organization like this at a young age. Naturally, it's a big part of why I've stuck around for 30 plus years, is that I've been able to be around the caliber of leadership team like you and so many others that we've described today or talked about today that are part of this great organization. And it's really an honor to be able to have such an amazing group of people leading our organization. And I'm really glad that you are a big part of that. And it's been really fun getting to hear some of your stories and experiences here today, Tim. Thanks a lot.
Well, I've certainly enjoyed it. I really appreciate the conversation, and again, the opportunity to come on, considering the talent and the heart of folks that you've had on here, Dan. I'll share with you too that the Changing Lives Selling Knives podcast. For us here in Olean, we use it here too, and in our safety leadership teams, in the small groups that we do, we have sessions every couple of weeks, and we use these podcasts, these recordings, as content material for us to better understand, not only the history of the organization and things, but the perspective of what's happening in the field. So I'd just like to thank you for what you're doing. You and this tool is having an impact here in Olean too. So again,
Awesome.
thank you.
Glad to hear that. Thanks so much for being a guest, Tim.
My pleasure.
Tim O'Keefe, everyone, Cutco COO. I was really struck by the range of experiences that Tim has had during his time with the company, starting on the factory floor, those 3 summers during college, and then continuing in customer service, his roles in helping expand Cutco internationally, the labor relations role that he had for many years, helping lead our HR team, and of course being the connector now between the Cutco and Vector organizations in his current role as COO. He stated that the definition of leadership is positive influence based on trust, respect, and integrity. And he also shared the insight that we compete on value, right? This is a concept that's true of the Cutco product, of course, right? That we're not so worried about competing on price. We want to compete on value. And competing on value is measured in experience. The experience of our customers, of course, is paramount. But there's a straight line between the experience of our employees in Olean, the experience of our Vector field organization, and the experience of our customers. They're part of that 3-legged stool that Tim described. And of course, Tim is most excited about for the future, the opportunity that we provide people, the opportunity that we provide for people, for our customers, of course, owning Cutco, for our Olean team to be part of the Olean Cutco family and have these great roles that so many people stay in for so long. They make that wall of honor, having been in the company for 25, 30, 35, 40 and more years. And then, of course, the opportunity that's provided for our Vector field sales organization. Many of you who are listening to this podcast should feel grateful that you have leaders like Tim O'Keefe and Jim Stitt Jr. who are helping to guide the Cutco organization. Of course, leaders like Al DiLeonardo and Bruce Goodman, who are helping to guide the Vector marketing field organization, and the many other great leaders that we have. And if you're an alumni, you're outside of Cutco, I think an episode like this is always worth thinking about. How can you be a part of bringing the Cutco culture to whatever you do? If you're somebody who runs your own company, how can you create this Cutco culture? People-centric focus, people-first decision-making, the family feel, the trust that is built, all the great things about Cutco. How can you bring those to the teams that you're a part of? Great stuff. I'm grateful again and honored to have been able to have Tim O'Keefe as our guest today. Hope you got a lot out of this episode.